Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on Entity Television. I'm Steve Lance. Attorney General Merrick Garland facing pressing questions as to whether or not the law has been applied equally across political ideologies. How did Attorney General Merrick Garland respond? Entity's Melina Wisecup reports from Capitol Hill.
DOJ Attorney General Merrick Garland appearing for the first time during this Congress before the Senate Judiciary Committee. GOP critics accusing Garland of not applying the law equally.
Merrick Garland, sadly, has been the most political attorney general we've ever had. He's used the Department of Justice and the FBI as a weapon.
And right after telling me this, Senator Cruz launched a heated exchange with Garland over what appears to be the DOJ's lack of prosecuting people for protesting outside of Supreme Court justices' homes who were opposing the overturn of Roe versus Wade. Here's a look at that exchange.
Say no. The answer's no. You know it's no. I know it's no. Everyone in this hearing room knows it's no. You're not willing to answer a question. Have you brought a case under this statute? Yes or no?
As far as I know, we haven't, and what we have done is defended the lies of the justices with over 70 U.S. Marshals.
How do you decide which criminal statutes the DOJ enforces and which one it doesn't?
And the Republicans pointed to a law which states that anyone who tries to influence justices' decisions should be prosecuted. And on this topic, Garland repeatedly responded that the DOJ has to prioritize prosecuting violence. At one point, Garland gave senators updates on their investigation into the January 6th Capitol breach, a point that Senator Cotton seized on to make his point.
Related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol, we are disrupting, investigating, and prosecuting violence and threats of violence.
Consider the efforts your department has put into tracking down everyone who was even on the Capitol grounds on January 6, 2021. You've dedicated millions of man-hours to study videotape, to do forensic analysis of computers and devices, to go knock and conduct interviews. You can't allocate just a few agents to look at people's social media accounts and say they were present outside of a justice's home.
And with many Republicans accusing the DOJ of acting with political bias, I asked Democrat Senator Jon Ossoff if he feels that these Republican accusations are warranted. Here's what he said.
Do you think it's valid, their argument, or do you think they're just doing this for political purposes?
Look, I think every senator has an obligation to their state and to their constituents to raise matters of concern, matters of principle.
And Republican senators also honed in on what they characterize as the DOJ's efforts to target parents who speak up at school board meetings. This comes as over here on the House side, Speaker McCarthy just unveiled the Parents' Bill of Rights.
The right to know what's being taught in the school and for you to be able to see the reading materials, right?
And the Republican-led House will take this bill up where it is expected to easily pass. However, it will face obstacles in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And amid mounting questions over the origins of COVID, Congress springs into action to broaden its investigation. And the lab leak theory again gaining steam as the FBI speaks out. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more from the White House.
Speculation is soaring after FBI Director Christopher Wray doubled down on a reported assessment by saying that the FBI believes the origin of COVID
are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. So here you're talking about a potential leak from a Chinese government-controlled lab that killed millions of Americans.
The Tuesday interview follows a report by the Wall Street Journal that says the Energy Department has concluded that the COVID-19 pandemic most likely came from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. And Director Wray called out the Chinese Communist Party for obstructing investigations into the COVID origins.
That the Chinese government, seems to me, has been doing its best to try to thwart and obfuscate the work here, and that's unfortunate for everybody.
And the White House is getting pressed on the latest revelation from the FBI, but it insists that there still hasn't been a final conclusion.
We have seen many different conclusions, right, from the intelligence community.
But while the White House highlights the need to find the COVID origin,
we need the data.
Still notes,
our relationship with China has not changed.
Meanwhile, House Republicans are kicking off a series of meetings and hearings to dig into the origin of COVID. That's as Senator Ron Johnson calls for bipartisan efforts.
We have Senator Marshall, Senator Paul, myself are very interested, as I think the American public is, in the origin of COVID. There should be nothing partisan about this whatsoever.
And lawmakers are calling on federal agencies, including the State Department, the Energy Department, and the FBI, to release more information about investigations into the COVID origins. And the House Select Panel on COVID Response is holding another hearing next week, specifically on COVID origins. Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
The House Select Committee on Competition with China has just held its first meeting. Lawmakers highlighted the threat posed by the Chinese Communist regime and its human rights abuses. We just sat down with Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina to discuss. Congressman Ralph Norman, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Congressman, House GOP, the Select Committee on China last night holding its first hearing. What are your thoughts? Is it telling that Democrats are now getting on board with Republicans in really becoming vocal right now?
What's telling is long overdue. To have this virus kill over 1 million Americans, I mean, think about that, over 1 million Americans. A virus that everybody knew didn't come from a bat. They didn't know where it came from, but it's now been acknowledged by the virologists it came from the lab. Whether it got out on its own or if it was intentional, who knows? Bottom line is the death rate's pretty high. And to reclaim the lives of those who are now dead is unacceptable. I'm glad the hearing took place. I think you'll see more of them. If the Democrats don't understand it, they do now. We're issuing a lot of subpoenas at every level. Every committee's got subpoena power. China is our enemy. China we've got to get disengaged from manufacturing to trade to imports. We've just got to get disconnected with them. They don't have America's best interests at heart. So I was glad it finally came out. If you read Scott Atlas's book, who was in the Trump administration and who dealt directly with Dr. Fauci, and you know, it's amazing, they said follow the science. Really? Why didn't they follow the science?
Now, I want to ask you, the FBI Director Christopher Wray has just come out and said the CCP is now trying to thwart the probe and any further investigation into this. Should organizations like the WHO, other independent bodies, other governments be more vocal about this?
I don't trust the World Health Organization. His track record has not been good. They're owned and essentially controlled by the CCP. And so it's up to America. We're the victims. And we've got every right to ask every question, hold every hearing. It's not a surprise that they're going to thwart any investigation. They don't want it out. And so that's where the truth is what needs to be told. I think it will be told. The truth always comes out at the end. It's got to be sooner rather than later, though.
Congressman, to your point about decoupling with China, a lot of people are now calling for that. You had Senator Hawley last night calling to revoke China's most favored nation trade status. Is this something that you think could potentially gain some steam in Congress?
Absolutely. I mean, this administration is getting more dependent on China. This administration has thwarted any type questioning of the COVID virus, as an example, of the treatment of COVID. And they're compromised. There has to be no other reason that they're taking the stance that they have. The rare minerals that China's providing, we have them here in America. The oil and natural gas, we have it here in America. We've got a 150-year supply of it. So we've got to get, China is not our friend. If the balloon didn't prove that, I don't know what did. If the TikTok didn't prove that, I don't know what did. Their surveillance of America has been allowed to go unfettered by this administration, and with the next administration, you'll see a different tact, regardless of who wins the presidency.
Congressman, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about AG Garland, who was on the Hill today sitting before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Faced a line of questioning from your hometown friend, Lindsey Graham, in terms of when it comes to fentanyl and minimum penalties for those who get caught dealing it or are caught in possession with it. He was asked if those people, if the minimum should be raised, and he deferred on it and deflected. What do you make of that?
It's no surprise with Merrick Garland. Look at his track record. He's weaponized his role as Attorney General. He's gone after people that he shouldn't go after. He's not interested in penalties. to punish those. He takes his orders from the Biden administration, and he's an embarrassment. And he's somebody that he has words, but nothing he says has any meaning because he doesn't believe in it. He has the talking points of the administration, and look at who he's gone after, from those who attend educational meetings that he doesn't like, to those trying to prosecute those who tear these cities up. It's just not there. It's not in his DNA, and it's not something he's not going to do. His exit couldn't come quick enough.
South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Lawmakers are trying to stop an ESG investment rule being pushed by the Biden administration. Various senators speaking out on the issue earlier today at the Capitol.
The Department of Labor has a new rule allowing retirement plan managers to invest based on ESG considerations. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. The retirement funds in question collectively invest $12 trillion on behalf of over 150 million Americans. The funds are supposed to be placed in investments that bring the highest return possible. The Labor Department's rule would change that, allowing investors to prioritize the ESG agenda over profit, something Illinois Senator Rick Scott pointed out on Wednesday.
If you put money into a retirement plan, you expect to get the best return you can get. You expect whoever's running it is a fiduciary to get the best return possible. What the Biden administration is saying is, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to have a fiduciary to get the best return. You can say, if you have some social agenda, you can go focus on your social agenda.
The House on Tuesday passed a resolution that would stop the Labor Department's rule. Representative Andy Barr of Kentucky argues that ESG investments mostly hurt profits.
ESG funds are by design less diversified. This is investing 101. When you discriminate against energy stocks and you are heavy in tech, when you're in a tech sell-off and when energy performs the market, who loses? The American retail investor who is unwittingly invested in these fraudulent, cancerous funds.
On Tuesday, the resolution passed the House along party lines. It also passed the Senate on Wednesday, with Democrat Joe Manchin and John Tester voting with Republicans. It's now heading for President Biden's desk. The White House on Monday issued a statement saying that if the president were presented with Resolution 30, he would veto it. The White House argues that there is evidence that ESG factors can have material impacts on certain markets, industries, and companies. Reporting by Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The DNA of 4 past United States presidents will be sent to outer space. The 4 chosen presidents are George Washington, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, and Ronald Reagan. Celestic, a space burial company orchestrating the project, special capsules on the United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket will hold the DNA when it flies into solar orbit. Celestic sends DNA into deep space with the hope that one day future civilizations could decode it and learn the story of this human civilization. The presidential honor was announced this past President's Day. DNA samples from other American icons will also be on the trip. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at EpochTV.com.